Right now, the St. Johns County Emergency Management is holding a news conference. They're talking about Nicole and what it could do later on this week.
And we do have a crew there at that briefing. Let's take a live look at that news conference and let's listen into what they're sharing tonight.
We're under a tropical storm warning and a storm surge warning. And so what that means for you is we're looking at conditions very similar to what we looked like with Ian along the coast, specifically in the city and other low-lying areas. So you're going to be looking at similar storm surge in those areas. Due to the nature of this storm, again, coastal and low-lying areas of the county have the opportunity to experience significant damage. We can also expect to see significant coastal erosion due to the path and the trajectory of the current storm. Obviously, our coast is still recovering from Ian, so we're going to be extra vulnerable with Nicole. Just continue to monitor the storm. Don't take it lightly. Continue to watch, look for updates from your local emergency operations center. And so what I want to do now is just provide some information to our residents, so what you're aware of what's going on and what the plan of action is for the next few days from the county. Let me start with evacuations. Voluntary evacuations, let me repeat that, voluntary evacuations are going to be in effect for those in the flood-prone areas at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Here's what we mean by voluntary. For those of you who have lived here or maybe are new here, you just experienced a storm, you know what to expect, you know what water rise looks like from the storm surge, and so at this point we're not mandating it. We'll continue to watch, continue to consider as the updates change over the next 24 to 36 hours. But for now, those are voluntary. We want you to take the safety of your family and friends into consideration. So look at what you experienced last time. Now's the time to go. Tomorrow morning is a good opportunity to leave, move inland. We're not talking about getting in your car and moving all the way into northern states, but just go ahead and get inland if you're in one of those low-lying areas. Based on Tropical Storm Nicole's current track, again, if you flooded during Ian, you can expect to flood during this storm. Let's talk a little bit about shelters. So residents who are living in boats, evacuations in RVs and mobile homes are also encouraged to go ahead and evacuate. We will be opening 2 shelters tomorrow starting at 1 p.m. Again, that's tomorrow starting at 1 p.m. 2 shelters will be open. One for our special needs population will be opened at the Health and Human Services building starting at 1 p.m. and then at the Solomon Calhoun Community Center also opening at 1 p.m. Those shelters will be available. Recommended shelter supplies are listed on our website at sjcfl.us/hurricane. Again, if we have an increase in that shelter population, we will open additional shelters as needed with the support and resources of the school department or school board. All county departments will begin tomorrow at noon. So county departments will close beginning tomorrow at noon. That includes obviously Parks and Recreation, libraries, and the remaining county departments will all close tomorrow at noon. We don't have any bridge closures at this time, so if you're wondering about are you going to be stuck or not at this time, there's no expected bridge closures. Those will be determined as we get closer and as we look up at wind speeds. There is a potential for utility and water service suspension for the Barrier Islands to protect the integrity of the water system. And again, we strongly urge you to remain informed, follow the guidance of your first responders, law enforcement personnel, reach out to agencies in the county that can help provide that information. In just a minute, I'm going to turn it over to our school superintendent, and then after that we'll answer some questions and we'll get going from there. So at this time I'm going to introduce our school superintendent, Tim Forson.
Thank you, Mr. Conrad, and I just want to just share, as I've done in the past, anytime we go through these community events, the support and the collaborative work that exists between the agencies that you see here today being represented and throughout our county. I think it's really important and hopefully reassuring to our families of our schools to know that there is a great camaraderie among the different agencies, among the different support groups in St. Johns County to do the right thing each and every time. I think one of the things that we have learned in the last few years is that severe weather is in fact severe weather, and we're seeing that impact different parts of our county in different ways. So for our schools, it's important that we make decisions that look at the school district as a whole. And so tomorrow we will be on our regular Wednesday early release schedule. At the end of that day tomorrow, there will be no after-school activities, athletic events, things of that nature. The schools that have extended day programs will maintain those extended day programs till 5:30 or 6 o'clock, depending on whatever the normal time is. And then on Thursday, all schools will be closed, and we feel that's really in the best interest of all of our families and our staff members as well. As we know, these storms are unpredictable, and the threat of the tidal flooding that is there would make transportation difficult and make it a challenge for not only students, but for staff members and families as well in our district. So again, we will be on our normal Wednesday early release tomorrow, and then Thursday, all schools will be closed, and it will be a non-work day for all employees of the St. Johns County School District. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forster. Now, this time we'll open up for any questions.
Will there be any curfews going into effect?
At this point, we're not looking at curfews. Anybody else?
We know that downtown area of St. Augustine, it floods quite often. What are you guys maybe doing to make sure that it doesn't? Are you trying to get people to leave as quickly as possible? How does that work?
Sure. So obviously, again, the recommended evacuation order. Again, not mandatory, voluntary and recommended, but also as far as hardening and infrastructure, I'm going to turn over to the city manager who's here as well.
Thank you. John Regan, City Manager for the City of St. Augustine. So we know what properties flood, and we have been sending targeted information and notices directly to people that need to know what to expect in their streets and to take the appropriate actions to protect their personal property and follow any decision on evacuation. We are also hardening city facilities that we know that flood. So we have an extensive plan that we have has already been deployed to safeguard our treatment facilities and our city hall.
Thank you.
I would like to add one other thing. The city government is closing in concert with the county at noon tomorrow, and also at 5 p.m. today we opened our parking garage for anyone that needs to elevate their vehicle to high ground, and we also have a secondary location in the event that the garage fills up at 301 San Marco Avenue.
We know
John,
that.
this comes so close after Ian, and the homes that were really hurt by Ian in St. Augustine, do you know how those folks are doing, and if anything else can be done to help prepare them for another impact from this storm?
We are working with them individually. There are homes that have, for example, storage pods in front yards, trailers, and we're advising them to be moved prior to the storm. We are working right now with 82 property owners on hazard mitigation grants, so we have a good database on who we need to be working with in very specific ways.
Sand dunes have been obviously the topic a lot with storm surge. And I know Ian depleted a lot of the sand dunes up and down the coastline. Even before that, you had Irma and Matthew. Can you talk about the significance of what this storm is going to be? Because I know just from speaking with the folks down in Flagler County, their sand dunes are pretty much just hanging on by a wing and a prayer at this point.
Sure. So as you know, we've got 42 miles of coastline. We just almost finished a FEMA berm replacement project that was being worked on. There's about a half a mile left along the coast. We expect, given Ian and this, to have significant erosion. And so much of those dunes and berm replacements we expect will be gone. Obviously, we'll assess again right after the fact to see how much damage there actually was. But it's a very real concern. 42 miles of coastline, constantly trying to protect, and we see one storm after another. It's nearly impossible to get that sand back on the beach in any capacity when storms are so closely situated to one another. So yeah, we're looking at significant coastal erosion, losing the lossage of dunes, and as soon as the storm's done, we'll get a chance to get out there and assess it and see what needs to be done.
And what do you say to those folks that live out on Volano Beach? Because I know every time something like this happens, you've got a lot of those homes where they walk out the back door and they're right on the beach.
Sure. So one of the things that, again, recommended evacuation, right? This is the time in the morning, and we don't want to alarm people, but we want to let them know, look, if you flooded during Ian, you're likely going to flood here in those low-lying areas. And so if you're living on Volano, if you're living in Summer Haven, if you're living in the city of St. Augustine, it's very likely that you're going to see some storm surge and some flooding. So now's the time to go. I would say this, most of those homeowners have been through this many, many times, unfortunately. And because of that, though, they're very well prepared on how to respond to that individually according to each of their own needs.
And I guess this is a little bit more unusual because we're dealing with a king tide on top of this storm. It's not just a regular storm without the king tide, similar to what we had with Irma.
Yeah, so when you see, obviously we talk about king tides or high tides and the tidal conditions, depending on what time the tide comes in and what time the storm comes in, we're still monitoring. Obviously that can speed up or slow down, and so that'll affect where it comes in along with the tidal conditions. But if the tide doesn't get back up, that's when we start looking at that significant storm surge, because it's a king tide, the tidal conditions are up higher than they are throughout much of the rest of the year, and then you have the storm that's coming in at the same time. So we'll monitor it, we'll continue to put out information related to what we can expect to see from tidal conditions.
Are you guys providing sandbags or anything like that for residents by chance?
Yes, we are, both in the city and the county, so I'll let John and our Director of Emergency Management, Joe Jamanco, respond. So John, if you want to go first.
Okay, I'll go first. Thank you again, John Regan, City Manager. So on Francis Field, next to the parking garage, we will resume our sandbagging operation at 8 a.m. in the morning, and we'll conclude by noon. I would encourage people who need sandbags that are near the city, and that's the best facility, to come as early as
So
possible.
you're listening right now to officials in St. Johns County give some information about Nicole's approach to our First Coast. This is St. Johns County, and they're saying if you live in that county, voluntary evacuations start tomorrow morning at 7. If you flooded out during Ian and that made you uncomfortable or you felt threatened, go ahead and go inland. Or if you're in an RV or maybe you're in a mobile home, they are suggesting that you evacuate inland. If you're in an area that you've been dealing with before and you feel like you're kind of a veteran of all this and you feel safe, then you don't have to evacuate tomorrow morning.
Right, and we do want to let you know St. Johns County is going to be opening 2 shelters tomorrow starting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. One of them is going to be a special needs shelter. That's going to be at the Health and Human Services Center in St. Johns County. The other one is going to be at the Solomon Calhoun Center. And we want to tell you also about schools. Tomorrow is going to be an early release day for St. Johns County School District. That's the typical Wednesday early release time. However, on Thursday, all schools will be closed, and so there will be no school at all on Thursday, and it's not a work day for employees.
And if you're wondering about Duval County schools, as of now, they're open. We're waiting to see if that changes. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.